So I'm very excited that I get the great opportunity this evening to host this youth climate statement handover. Not only is this a labor of love for Save the Children, but also an expression of how passionate our young people are right now to talk about climate justice, to activate on climate justice, and to see changes being made. My name is Vera. I'm the Youth Engagement Coordinator for Save the Children, and I get to be your host this evening. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of everything, I will open us up with a karakia, and then we'll move into our agenda for this evening. So if you're familiar, feel free to join me, but if not, feel free to just listen. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mākina ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai. He ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti he, mauri ora. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome so much to this very, very special evening. A great opportunity. Like we've said, it's a labor of love for us. So we're just really excited that we get the opportunity to kick off, talk about the climate, talk about the work we were able to do with the climate simulation, and have our young people on the call tonight to speak to what they're most passionate about, climate justice. So to kick off, we are going to have our youth representatives here from Generation Hope and the Youth Climate Collective lead off with some introductions. And I will pass it over to Sylvie.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Sylvie. I'm a 16-year-old youth advocate from Tamaki Makaurau. So yeah, as Vera said, I'm a youth ambassador for Save the Children with Generation Hope. And I've had the pleasure of working with some of the wonderful people on this panel over the past year or so. I am really passionate about addressing climate change because I believe that urgent action is really vital to protect our planet and ensure a sustainable future. I mean, it's had such a colossal impact on global health and the quality of life for our generation and generations to come, which has really motivated me to push for this actionable policy change. And so by presenting this statement today, it's myself and I'm joining other rangatahi in pressing for change to mitigate these climate impacts and ensure a stable and sustainable environment for our future. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sylvie. Delara?
Kia ora koutou. So my name's Delara, and like Sylvie, I am also 16, and I come from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. I'm connected to this kaupapa today because I strongly believe that it is up to us as youth to safeguard our environment and protect it for future generations. And I want to show that although rangatahi are often talked about as leaders of tomorrow, we are also leaders of today. Unfortunately, I know that a lot of young people feel disconnected to the environment and don't see themselves making a difference. And this is simply because they think that, oh, there are a lot of major corporations out there who are solely responsible for climate change, or these big corporations out there are making such a big impact that I can't have a personal impact and I can't do anything to reduce the impact of climate change. And furthermore, young people are often desensitized to suffering caused by global corporations, such as river pollution by fast fashion companies. And youth are actually at the highest risk of desensitization as a generation which have grown up with easy access to the internet and the news as well. So I believe that it is incredibly important to show that there is hope for the future, because it is hope that can help reverse this desensitization and inspire rangatahi to become climate advocates. And that is why I am so incredibly proud to be a part of this youth rōpū here today, who are helping to promote Model COP. And I think that it's a great initiative to show that we are actually responsible and that there is hope for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Delara. Jemima? Oh, apologies, Jemima, you're on mute.
Oh my God, that is so embarrassing. Anyway,
Fine.
kia ora, ko te mautakinga. Ko te Aotearoa te iwi. I'm a Gen Hope ambassador and I'm also head of School Strike for Climate 2025. This kaupapa is so important to me, not only as an Indigenous person who's and I live on iwi land, but this is incredibly important to me because I know how much of a difference it's going to make, not only in our group, but across the country and to our policymakers and the people that make huge change. And the people that this is affecting, I'm sure they all appreciate this and appreciate having their voice heard. And I'm so proud of this group and for everything that we've done this year. Um, I'm really, really grateful to be able to spend time and to be in this space because I've been given this opportunity through hard work, yes, but also because my community has lifted me up and I have that privilege to be here, so I really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm very appreciative to be speaking tonight.
Thanks, Jemima. And to you, Toa.
Unmute. Talofa lava o lo ingoa o toa o te sau mai ngā motu taranaki. I'm 17, turning 18 in a few days, and I am an advocacy Samoan European. This work that we're doing in Generation Hope at the moment is so important to me as someone who comes from the islands, but also was born here in New Zealand. I've seen both sides of the story of what happens both here in New Zealand and what happens in the islands when it comes to the climate change crisis. And and knowing that I have something that I can do that can help with the loss and damages in New Zealand when it comes to the crises from a climate is something that's so empowering. And knowing that as an islander, as a youth islander, I have something that I can do and my voice will actually be heard, and it's so empowering. And I want to make sure that our voices are being heard as Indigenous people, but also so that one day the people after us will all know that there were people before them that were able to be heard and that their voices were heard and everything that they said was set in stone in the end. And that's something that's very important to me and that's always going to be very important to me. And I'm very glad to be able to be here to speak in this call. Yeah.
Kia ora. Thank you, Toa. Just from these first few minutes alone, I am reminded of how lucky I am that I get to work with Generation Hope to lead this program because already such powerful, such wise words coming through. Passing it over to Faisia from the Youth Climate Collective.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Vera. Talo palava, malo soifua. O loingo Faisia Archie. Yeah, I was just basically saying my name is Faisia Archie, born and raised in Savaii, Samoa. Moved here about 10 years ago, and I do work with Pacific Climate Warriors, Pacific Vision Aotearoa, Parakariki Tamaki, and I'm also part of Youth Climate Collective, which is an organization, a youth group actually created by a bunch of broke university students who are really passionate about climate change. We actually started this youth group 2 years ago when me and two of my other friends got the opportunity to represent Auckland, New Zealand and the Pacific at the C40 Mayors Conference in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So we were sent there and there were a lot of youth groups at the event, and we were the only three from New Zealand. No one know where New Zealand is, and we were there by ourselves without a youth group. So we got back and we formed Youth Climate Collective, and here we are. So thank you so much, Vera and Save the Children, for connecting us with you guys and allowing us to run this workshop together. But yeah, looking forward to this talanoa with everyone. Whawhatai lava.
Thank you so much. And I'll pass it over to our lovely MPs on the call. Ricardo, please feel free to kick off.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Ricardo. I was born and raised in Mexico, and I came as a first-generation migrant to Aotearoa 18 years ago. Before being an MP, I was advocating and working alongside people in the benefit in our homeless whānau, and having grown up in a place where water scarcity was common already growing up, and it's now getting worse as a result of climate change. For me, climate change is not an abstract thing. It's like many have spoken before. It's a thing that threatens our families and our communities as well. And it's a privilege to serve in my role as a Green MP.
Thank you.
Thank you for the mahi that you're all doing. And as you've said, Vida, amazing words already to start off the panel.
Thank you so much. Hannah, up to you.
Tēnā rā tātou I tēnei o ngā pō e mihi ana kia koutou katoa me ngā mahi nui, kua whakaoti e tutuki ana i a koutou. Tēnā rā tātou, my name's Hunter Rafferty. I'm the MP for Hauraki Waikato and a part of Te Pāti Māori. Really, really privileged and humbled to be listening to your guys' amazing mahi that you do for our taiao, our whenua, our people. Big ups to all of the superhero work that you guys continue to do and advocate for, whatever that may look like. And yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm really, really keen and eager to hear the kōrero tonight, and awesome to see you too, Ricardo. E mihi ana, kia ora.
Kia ora. Oh, well, now we've gone through all of our introductions, we can get into the actual presentation of our youth statement. Just a note to the audience, this is a great opportunity to start getting all your questions together as we present, as the speakers continue to share their thoughts, and as we hear our response from our MPs, we will have some time allotted at the end where you will be able to ask some questions and hopefully get them answered. Feel free to use the chat function or to send them directly to me, and if there are any issues, sing out to one of the members of our team and they'll be able to support you as well. But I will kick off so that way we can have our youth climate statement video.
Waves of resistance turned triumphant palms open in deep blue karakia, and big-bellied laughter that cracks the sky into shards. Blessings rain down from ancestral cries. Our tongues will weave harmonious. We have lost so much, but our resistance persists, and the dust of the South Pacific still calls. Ain't that an endeavor worth dying for? Ain't that an endeavor worth living for? We are an unscathed dawn reclaimed. We, an anthem reborn in our mother's name. We will sink our limbs into history. We will remain, and you will remember. You must, and this trust brown hearts will adjust to love us and our beauty and our ugly and our everything in between and our everything that has been before and our everything yet to come and our everything. Kia ora. Yeah!
That is still such a breathtaking video every time I get the pleasure of seeing it. As you can see, what took place was a brilliant day that was not only filled with a lot of heart and passion, but deep conversation, deep narratives about the climate crisis, what it means to our young people, and the actions that need to be taken in order for us to work towards really tangible solutions. Our youth climate simulation was an opportunity for young people to get the chance to play into the roles of the stakeholders that currently act at COP, that currently hold a lot of the influence over what happens to our climate and what happens in this country to the communities that live here and the communities that will be disproportionately affected by this crisis. It was an opportunity to be in the roles of educators, of people fighting for social justice, fighting for our Indigenous communities, and seeing the ways in which we could work together to have fruitful solutions that reflected the needs of our children and young people at its core. So it was a privilege to put together. Obviously, in that video, you saw some very familiar faces. So it's a pleasure that I get to pass it over to hear some of the core reflections, the core objectives that we were able to achieve out of those conversations as a part of our youth climate statement. I'll kick it off to Whaeasia, talk a little bit about the energy in that room, the capability of the young people that you got to see as a facilitator, as a part of the Youth Climate Collective.
Oh, bless. Whaftai lava Vera. As mentioned earlier, myself and our Youth Climate Collective youth group, we facilitated this session. We specifically touched on 3 sessions, which is wash, loss and damage, and the last one was around sustainable food systems. I run the loss and damage session, and during our discussion, it was great to hear, loss and damage specifically. And I remember Toa and one of our amazing wahine there, they were sharing stories from their personal experiences, things that they've seen, things that their parents have told them, which is something that is really, I think this is something that our global leaders have no idea that, some of us are literally on the front line of climate change, which Toa really, I'm so sorry, Toa, if I'm mentioning your name, Ola. Yeah, which is something that was really, I was so emotional, but because this is something that I'm very passionate about. Although growing up in a family where we sell fish for a living, and then to hear Toa's stories and a lot of our rangatahi, it was just very personal and very touching. So the energy was very empowering. And I'm not going to take up all of my 5 minutes because I know these guys have prepared so much. So I'm just going to pass it on to everyone. But we are super grateful that we were able to work together with these guys. But I'm going to let you guys share your thoughts and share what you guys share on the day. Share what you guys share on the day. So pass it on to our team.
Thank you, Sia. And I think you touched on something that's so core at the heart of this is that for young people in the Pacific, it is not a political decision to care about climate change. It is deeply personal. It's deeply centered on community and family. And you are absolutely right. That is apparent in every single section. So I'm going to pass it over to Sylvie to talk on one of our key topics, WASH.
Kia ora, thank you, Vera. I will be talking about WASH. So water, sanitation, and hygiene are basic human needs, and yet they remain critical gaps across the world, especially in communities that face the brunt of climate change. When we talk about WASH, it's not just a matter of building infrastructure, but creating resilience and community support in a world that's constantly shifting under the weight of climate crises. The recommendations by Aotearoa's young people of today is an acknowledgement that the challenges in WASH are inseparable from climate justice. Communities around the world have resources stretched thin by polluted water systems, where what flows from a tap isn't a guarantee of health, but a gamble. The proposal for financial support from developed countries is about shared responsibility. The climate crisis is global, but its effects hit the least prepared the hardest. By investing in clean water access, countries in the global north can help prevent epidemics, protect lives, and support adaptation in the places that need it most. One of the most powerful ideas is to encourage global funding schemes to fund sustainable WASH infrastructure. It's a responsibility for those with the most resources to contribute to the clean water, safe sanitation, and basic hygiene that's not just a desire, but a human right. This isn't just a fiscal solution, but a moral one, addressing some of the deep inequities that climate change has laid out on the table. Another important recommendation was education. Educating people about sustainable water practices, especially by integrating Indigenous knowledge, is essential. Indigenous practices offer wisdom on sustainable living that's often overlooked, yet it's among the knowledge we need to adapt to a changing climate. Empowering communities to understand and manage their own water resources creates a cycle of knowledge and self-reliance that goes beyond simply creating a short-term fix to immediate and urgent issues that can have long-term effects. And when we call for a global disaster response unit dedicated to WASH, we're talking about readiness, a system that doesn't solely react to emergencies, but has the tools and resources to mitigate the effects before they develop into disaster. This unit, which is envisioned within the World Health Organization, could bridge critical gaps, getting water, sanitation, and hygiene support to people when they need it most and saving lives in the process. These recommendations are pathways to mitigate our response to climate change as an island nation and to ensure that we address immediate needs while building a future that prioritizes equity, sustainability, and security for all. They reflect our commitment not just to adaptation, but to justice, ensuring that those most impacted by climate change receive the support and resources that they deserve. So this statement, which is created by youth voices from across Aotearoa, is a call to action, one that demands not just the attention of governments, but a commitment from all of us to make water, sanitation, and hygiene accessible and equitable. It's about forging a legacy that honors the right to safe water and a healthy future for all. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Dilara to share her perspective and speak to further recommendations that are made by our young people about sustainable food systems. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Sylvie. So I'll be talking about sustainable food systems, which was the second main topic that we discussed at New Zealand Model COP. So when talking about sustainable food systems, it's not only important to talk about the sustainability from a climate perspective, but also economic and social point of view. So this social sustainability looks like incorporating Indigenous knowledge and addressing inequalities with targeted, equitable food distribution. From the climate point of view, sustainable food systems are crucial and directly linked to both climate mitigation and adaptation, particularly in regions hardest hit by the impacts of climate change. Our different stakeholders had different insights corresponding to their particular roles, and the main issues discussed were Indigenous rights and practices, financial incentives, and equitable food distribution. So I'll start by talking about the first topic we discussed, which was equitable distribution of food and resources. So the main recommendation that our rangatahi came up with was to identify areas with the most need and redistribute food and resources, as well as agricultural imports, to ensure that these regions receive adequate support. This includes equitable access to nutrition, particularly for disadvantaged areas. Now, this is important because climate change exacerbates food insecurity, particularly in vulnerable regions. Equitable distribution ensures that those most affected by food scarcity receive the necessary resources to survive and thrive. Our second point of discussion was incorporating Indigenous practices in agricultural education. So the recommendation that rangatahi from New Zealand Model COP came up with was to integrate Indigenous sustainable agricultural practices into school curriculums, ensuring that traditional farming methods are taught to future generations. Indigenous farming techniques have proven to be sustainable and environmentally friendly, and educating young people on these practices will contribute to a more sustainable food system and respect Indigenous knowledge, as well as maintain this knowledge for generations to come. Moving on to our third point of discussion, which is restoration and protection of Indigenous lands. So the recommendation that we had on this topic was to establish policies that prioritize the restoration and protection of Indigenous lands, promoting a reciprocal relationship between people and the environment. Indigenous communities have long cultivated a sustainable relationship with the land, and protecting their whenua and prioritizing restoration will safeguard biodiversity and support sustainable agricultural practices. So now I will move on to the financial incentives discussions that we had. So our fourth point of discussion was financial incentives to reduce monocultural farming. So monocultural farming is the practice of growing only one crop at one time on a certain field. So the recommendation we had was to introduce financial incentives that discourage monocultural farming practices and promote crop rotation to prevent soil degradation and promote sustainable land use. Now, the reason monocultural farming is bad is because monocultural farming practices result in fertile land sitting empty and ultimately wasting the potential to produce more crops, which is quite clearly not good for sustainable food systems, and it's something that we really must work to oppose, which is why financial incentives are one of the first things that came to mind when we were discussing this issue. Monocultural farming depletes the soil of nutrients, leading to long-term environmental damage, and crop rotation and diverse farming practices are essential for maintaining soil health and sustainable agriculture. So now I'll move on to our final point of discussion, which is tax reform to promote healthy eating. So Sylvie briefly touched on tax earlier when talking about a wealth tax in regards to wash systems. But when we're talking about tax in regards to sustainable food systems, we're looking at a more targeted approach to help reduce the cost of living for families and also to ensure that they can make healthier choices. So our recommendation was to provide tax breaks for healthy foods such as fruits and vegetables and increase taxes on processed foods to incentivize healthier diets. There was also some discussion around covering this lost tax revenue by introducing a sugar tax, although this wasn't something that we discussed in detail. So tax incentives can encourage healthier eating habits, reduce the consumption of processed foods, and promote sustainable agricultural practices. This also makes nutritious food more accessible to low-income communities, which is something that we really need when we're talking about sustainable food systems. It's not enough to just be talking about the farmers and the agricultural practices, but we also have to talk about the people and the consumers who are impacted by all of these changes that we are making. So overall, it was great to see rangatahi talk about such a wide range of issues and solutions surrounding sustainable food systems. It's important to note that sustainable food systems cannot truly operate successfully if we do not invest in sustainable water, sanitation, and hygiene practices and find ways to mitigate loss and damage in relation to agriculture. So on this note, I'd love to hand over to the lovely Toa to speak about the insights and outcomes that came from our loss and damage workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Talara. Okay. At our COP simulation, we spoke on loss and damages and shared quite a few insightful ideas, such as stressing the importance of Indigenous voices when it comes to the impacts of climate change crises on the global south, mostly focusing on the Pacific. This would include people who have or are moving to Aotearoa, who do not have the resources they need, communities living in the islands who need that extra support to look after their homes and families, and our Indigenous people living in poverty who do not have the money and resources needed during the climate disasters. Coming from someone who has gone home to the islands and heard stories from my family, it's apparent that their voices have not been heard as much as they need. To prepare for the climate crisis in the future, many back home don't even know what's happening to their homes. So here are a few points our rangatahi came up with. Number one was to establishment of a global climate resilience fund, to create globally funded climate resilience fund to support the infrastructure rebuilding in vulnerable countries with contributions from the global north nations and international organizations. A global climate resilience fund that can be accessed by children and youth, and that a percentage of the fund must be spent on programs that directly include and support our children and youth. Climate disasters are already displacing communities and destroying infrastructure. A resilience fund ensures that communities in the global south receive the resources needed for a long-term recovery and rebuilding. The second points that we made were the investment in renewable energy infrastructure. Significantly increase funding for renewable energy projects in climate-affected countries, focusing on developing sustainable and eco-friendly energy systems to reduce dependency on fossil fuels. Renewable energy infrastructure is crucial to mitigate climate damage and build resilience against the future impacts. It empowers vulnerable nations to transition to clean energy while adapting to climate-related challenges. The third point that was made was global insurance framework for climate disasters. Implement a global insurance system to support communities affected by the climate disasters, covering both infrastructure and livelihoods. This system will provide compensation and aid recovery efforts. Many developing nations lack the financial needs to recover from climate disasters. A global insurance framework would ensure the swift recovery support, reducing the long-term damage to lives and economies. The fourth point was prioritization of Indigenous knowledge and resource protection. This is something that is close to home for me as a Pacific Islander who has family back in Samoa who hold lots of knowledge of how they care for their land and protect their home. We recommended this to ensure the inclusion of Indigenous knowledge in climate resilience strategies, especially in protecting natural resources and biodiversity. Indigenous voices must be represented at every level in decision making. Like I said before, many islanders don't have much of a say what happens to them, so it's important since Indigenous communities possess valuable traditional knowledge about sustainable land and resource management. Incorporating this knowledge will help tailor resilience efforts to local context, enhancing overall impact. And the final point that we made was the global collaboration for education and community outreach. Foster global partnerships to create educational programs for climate adaptation, climate adaptation, with a special focus on displaced children and affected communities. This program should emphasize climate resilience and the opportunities for careers in this area. Education is vital to prepare communities for the future climate risks, strengthening educational infrastructure and outreach initiatives to equip vulnerable populations with tools to adapt and thrive in the changing climate. Because altogether, there are so many islanders all across the world, especially here in the global south, in their homes in the islands, and even people here, like our rangatahi here in Aotearoa as well. There is a big lack of knowledge within schools for them to know what is happening to their homes, and we need to make sure that they know about it, and so that they can have their opinions and their voices heard, and for the change to actually happen, which is something that I hold very dear to me, and it's something I'm very passionate about. But now I'll hand it over to our wonderful gems who will speak on our hopes for the future. Thank you.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi nui toa for that. It was so beautiful. Your voice is so powerful, and we really, really appreciate what you're saying. Because it is people like you who help us make this change, and get our lawmakers and our policymakers to listen. So, the outcomes and recommendations from the Aotearoa Youth COP simulation reflect a profound sense of hope and determination from not only us, but our younger generation as we tackle some of the most pressing global challenges that have ever been presented to humanity. These amendments brought forward by our youth highlight a transformative approach to issues such as water, sanitation, and hygiene, climate resilience in the face of loss and damage, and the creation of sustainable food systems. By amplifying Indigenous voices and fostering equitable solutions, young people are setting a powerful example for leadership, just as Toa, Delara, Sylvie, and everyone in Gen Hope is. One that is deeply connected to values of respect for te taiao, community well-being, and justice. Incorporating these perspectives and innovations brings not only us, but our whole generation the opportunity for fresh hope for a future where we can achieve environmental stability, social equality, and health security. Because with climate change, we have the option now to stop it and to reduce the harms that it's causing. But we have all of the tools, we have all of the resources that we need. It is just our governments and it's the people in power and influence who get to make that decision. And all we can do now is hope to convince them of something that should be blaringly obvious. Sorry. As we weave these insights into global actions, we're reminded of the strength that lies in kotahitanga and in collaboration. The optimism of our rangatahi empowers us to envision a world that embraces and respects diverse perspectives, ensuring that both te taiao efforts honor both our cultural heritage and our shared responsibility to protect Papatūānuku. Young people are more engaged than ever in the fight for climate action, running for political power, and making their voices heard in every sphere. The ones that I know bring with them a fearless determination to challenge the status quo and inspire a shift away from exploitative practices. These commitments from our youth are a testament to our vision of a sustainable future, one where our mokopuna inherit a world that has not only survived this, but is thriving. Our resilience and hope remind us that together we can build a world where both people and planet prosper. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, James. And thank you all for delivering different pieces of this statement. I feel like before we kick off into hearing back the response, I think it's a huge round of applause to all of you. You've all done such amazing work being a part of this event, a part of this message, and it is not an easy feat to deliver it. And I just want to take this moment to appreciate you all for not only putting your hands up, but delivering it so beautifully, for weaving personal narrative, for sharing your passion and dedication with us all on like a Wednesday night, like we Tuesday night, apologies. We sincerely appreciate the amount of work that you're really pouring into this space right now. And now that we've, taken the time to hear all your words, I just want to open it up to our MPs to respond.
This is me waiting to see if Hannah's going to mute herself first. Should I just go? Right. Well, yeah, kia ora. That was so amazing. And I think just the weaving of issues around water, like the importance of representation and having Indigenous wisdom being represented in policy, and like how food systems just are critical to our survival and how climate change is putting them at risk. I think what you've all, I think, instilled in me is a reminder that everything is connected and that it will take all of us and taking a system lens approach to addressing the climate crisis. But at the core, I think we cannot put aside how an economic system that is extractive puts all of the things you're fighting for and that you've learned over the past few weeks at risk. And I think domestically, it just reminds me of the importance of fighting to honor Te Tiriti, and that none of the stuff that you've outlined will be able to be done if our foundational document isn't actually respected. And so, yeah, I think to me, it's just so important to put all these and knowledges that you've taken on into a domestic context and how we've got a fight ahead, not just globally, but here in Aotearoa too. I'll pass it over to Hannah.
Kia ora, Ricardo. Awesome. Yeah, just tailoring off Ricardo's kōrero. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, experiences, and wisdom around the many different kaupapa within taiao that you have been championing, that you have experienced. For me personally, that was one of the biggest reasons why, well, actually, my whole purpose was to just stay in the marakai, and somehow I ended up as a politician. But that tailored those key soil roots, kaupapa, to champion our first ever kai sovereignty policy that is driven and tailored by Indigenous knowledge, and making sure that there who are actually on the front line of fighting climate crisis, whether that's in the Mara, whether that's in our moana, whether that's in our pepeha, because that's what connects us to taiao through our whakapapa as well. They can see those common, familiar kaupapa reflected in our policy as well. So really, really humbled to listen to your guys' kōrero tonight. Ngā mihi.
And thank you both so much for receiving it. I think there is something really wonderful about the fact that this was created with such an amazing group of young people, that the weaving of narrative reflects all of the diverse experiences, skills, thoughts, and perspectives that we got to have in that room. And even out of one day, we were able to produce something this powerful. And the work that we hope to do here at Save the Children is that we can continue to provide opportunities for children and young people to continue to express themselves and then to bring those thoughts to the decision-making level. So this is a great example of us accomplishing that goal and bringing our young people alongside with us. But we hope to continue the journey, as we know it's ongoing, especially when we're talking about climate justice and the climate crisis. I know that we've received a couple of questions from the audience, so I do want to dive into the notes and see if there's anything juicy in particular. And we've got something for all of our youth representatives on the call, so get ready. Okay, what can you say to young people who are interested in climate justice, but who are unsure about where to start? And that's open to anyone who would like to unmute first and jump on.
Personally, I think get involved in your community, look on Facebook, look on TikTok, literally any events that have anything to do, start at the grassroots, start at community level, because that is where the mahi matters. You know, go to a tree planting in like Island Bay. They have ones every Sunday all the way to August, and it makes a huge difference. And it's these connections as well that can help you get even further in this mahi. I know from personal experience, this is what's helped me get into the places that I am. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my community supporting me. So yeah, I just think reach out to people in your community. Feel free to reach out to any of us or through this channel and ask us questions like this, because this is what we have information about. This is what we love to talk about. Because this mahi is so important, and it's going to be what people, you know, when they ask you about, oh, what did you do? You can say, oh yeah, I was planting trees. And then I hit it. So yeah.
Thanks, James. Would anyone else like to chime in?
I think it's also very important for our rangatahi to like reach out, like if they're in schools, to reach out to their teachers and their peers and stuff, to see what else they're doing, what the opportunities they have at school, because you have to start somewhere. And like for a lot of us as well, we started a lot of our journey at school and then proceeded to join Generation Hope, which is just such a crazy big thing that could happen for us, and it's been such a blessing. But I think it's important that you find what you're comfortable with, and you start small and you slowly build yourself up to see like how far you can go, because seriously, you can go very far. And like as a youth ambassador as well, like we can say that even though we are young, we have like achieved so much so far, and it's just so awesome to be able to do it. And I think that every youth out there can do the same and pitch in as much as they'd want, because it's just such a fun thing to do. But yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much, Toa. I do not want to stop. Please, anyone else want to jump on? These inspirational words I know are going to be life-changing for someone who's watching. Anything else? Words of wisdom.
I can also speak to my own like personal experience for how I got involved. So when I was a bit younger, like a couple of years ago, I mean, to be honest, I have always been really interested in and passionate about politics and diplomacy. So the way that I actually learned about Generation Hope and I got more into advocacy was by attending UN youth events, because surprise, surprise, but that's where you find all the people who are passionate about diplomacy and politics. And for me, in my experience, I would say that like connecting with people from these events is the best thing you can get out of the event. Of course, the content of the event is great. It's always awesome if you can go to events which encourage civic engagement and community development and advocacy and all of that kind of thing. But just making sure that you connect to people, and everyone is friendly. Like we're all here to help you. We all want to help build the movement. No one's gonna like tell you, no, don't plant trees. Like, we're all here to help each other. So definitely just go to all the events that you want to go to and reach out to the people, because it's the people that start the movement and continue the movement. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Delara. Sylvie, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I guess just speaking to what everyone else has said, kind of starting the mahi on a very community level, like what James was saying about grassroots initiatives, I think that is where some of the most impactful change can be made. Be it, beach cleanups, tree planting, going even to local climate strikes, that can be so powerful and give you such an empowering sense, of community and passion, and really just motivate you to want to create this change and be part of this movement, because it is so important, for us as the leaders of today and the leaders of tomorrow, to kind of find these opportunities, and if there are no opportunities, then make them ourselves, and kind of create this space to make change. If you're passionate about something and you can't find any opportunities, make that space yourself, pave that way. And I think we all have so much drive and motivation and so much initiative to do these things. And I think having the courage and confidence and inner strength to act on that is so powerful. And not only it can uplift yourself, but also others around you and inspire them to do the same thing. And it's kind of this chain reaction. And I think that is one of the biggest things that we can do, as young people and young leaders. So yeah, thank you, Vera.
No, thank you. Those are absolutely wise words. And there is something about the energy and dynamicism that you describe of what happens when you pave your own way and create something for other people coming behind you, when you acknowledge your own power and see how you can make a difference, that is so palpable that I know that everyone else who is watching can definitely feel it as well. We have also received a question for our MPs on the call, so get ready. Question being, why do you think that it's important that children's voices are included in the climate conversation, and how does that affect how you carry out your work?
I might just go. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your part. I think it's crucial to have me. No.
Oh, apologies, you might be lagging just a bit.
I think it's come back.
Have I come back?
And you're back, absolutely.
Sorry, climate crisis here in Huntly. We're like pretty much storming down here, so my network actually might cut out because I live pretty rural. But it's so important that we have the younger generations and rangatahi, particularly in our taiao policy framework making, whatever that looks like, goal setting, because at the end of the day, it will affect them first and foremost before anyone else. So they must be at the forefront of those discussions. Kia ora.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think similar to Hannah, like I think it's just so obvious that younger people are disproportionately affected by decisions literally herself and I make in the chamber in the house. And I also think that like this notion of children not having salient political contributions is actually like a quite colonial and relatively recent culture. Like in a lot of our cultures, like the voices of children are actually really important and are often centered. And I would say that often I've found that I've gotten spicier and better put questions at panels that I've done at schools than I've done in retirement homes. no shade to our senior citizens, but I think it just says to me that like that all the rules are made up and likewise they can be broken, and that means taking young people's voices more seriously, and giving them power, not just, I guess, like the words around politicians saying young people are inspiring, but actually creating methods for young people to have power in the political system.
Oh, that is such a word, just that last bit of constantly being called inspiring, but clearly not inspiring enough to create action. So I really appreciate you kind of acknowledging the space that children and young people take up to not only inspire, but to activate. So thank you so much for your kōrero. I did want to offer up the opportunity back to our youth representatives. You've had an opportunity to hear from our MPs on the call. You've had the opportunity to hear those reflections to the statement. Are there any final words or thoughts that you have that you would like to share just as yourself?
Um, I just want to say, like, thank you for giving us the opportunity to be able to speak to you and share our point of views and the ideas that us as a rangatahi can make, like, we come up with as a group. And it's so empowering to know that we are being heard when we do want to reach out. Um, it just means a lot to all of us as well, just to be able to come out here and get to say our part and know that there are people in Parliament who do want to listen and who do like understand what we're saying, and that they respect us and they believe that, like what Ricardo said as well, with having more of the spicier questions, which is like, it's honestly just so much, it's so true, because we have grown up with all of these things around us all the time, and that once we're given the chance and we're seeing that we have this opportunity to speak up, we're gonna do it. And it's such a blessing, and thank you very much.
Nora, thank you, Toa. Delara, any final thoughts, takeaways?
Yeah, kind of just leading on from what Toa said, it's really nice to have to be able to engage with MPs who are genuinely interested in what we have to say, because personally, I have engaged with other MPs who have kind of looked the other way and not really shown much regard for youth. Especially if you MPs, especially if it's not like their role within government, if they're not the Minister for Children or Youth Development or something like that, they kind of think that it falls outside their jurisdiction, or that it's not their moral responsibility, or it's not within the responsibility of their role to care about what we have to say. And a lot of them simply think that they know better because they have more experience. But it's really I'm really grateful that you can acknowledge that it's not more experience that matters. It's the fact that everyone has different experiences, and like everyone having different experiences is why we all deserve to have our voices heard, because that means we represent a wide range of perspectives. And I mean, representing a wide range of perspectives is how you uphold democracy. So yeah, huge thank you to both of you for showing genuine interest and regard for what we have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delara. Sylvie?
Yeah, thank you. Delara, what you just said, I really resonate with them, and and Toa as well. I mean, I think the gratitude that I feel for being on this panel today is so colossal. I mean, because as young people, we are so often underrepresented and misunderstood. Our voices, we may have these places where we can say what we feel, and we can share our desires and our calls to action. And a lot of the time we're being told that we're being listened to, but we know that we're really not, and we can kind of sense that. And so I think holding a space for us to be genuinely and truly understood, as Delara was saying, is, I think, so powerful and such a big step. And I really hope that there are more spaces like these in the future for young people to genuinely feel like what they are saying is having this impact, and it will continue to have a further impact. And I think young people in rangatahi across the country have the power to pave the way for the future. And so holding this space and allowing us to kind of, I suppose, take it with open arms and fully express our desires for the future and what we want to see as young people who will grow up in this future I think is so powerful, and it is so important to kind of uphold and continue providing these opportunities. So yeah, thank you to Ricardo and Hannah for joining us today. And yeah, I'm just feeling so grateful and honored to be here on this panel. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sylvie. James?
I honestly couldn't have put it better, Sylvie. Thank you. I genuinely, every single thought in my head was put into words by these three whānau. But the one thing I would have to add is that, like, our voices, I don't think we realize sometimes how powerful they are to the right people. Because a lot of people, they want to stick their head in the sand. They don't want to listen because it freaks them out. And understandably, the climate crisis is terrifying. But what's more terrifying is ignoring it and letting it happen. So we really need our politicians to listen to us no matter how scary it is. Because, you know, I like a planet too. And there's no economy on a dead planet. And our policymakers need to hear that. I've been told countless amounts of times that, oh, it used to be so much more simple. Oh, why are you worrying about this? Oh, you're being so dramatic. Am I? Because I'm not the one who created these problems. I'm the one who's dealing with the consequences of them, and I'm rightfully freaking out about it. And I'm doing something. I'm not sitting in my room crying. Which I want to sometimes, but I go out there and I do this mahi and I work with these people because I know how important the work is. I know how many other people would love to have the opportunity that I do, and so I use that to the best of my advantage. But I think all of these people on this call tonight, all the people watching, are just so incredible. I hope that you listen with an open mind. I hope you take this back to Te Whare o Parimata. I hope that this makes change. So yeah.
James, you never fail to leave us with deeply sobering words, and I always appreciate it. And I know our audience and MPs do as well. Fayasia?
Oh man, bless James. That was a mic drop response, honestly. I guess nothing else from me, just following up from what everyone says. A huge whakataitele lava to everyone, to Vera as well, and Save the Children team, to our amazing MPs, two MPs are here with us tonight. I think what I would love to see, and just to actually for you guys to actually go to COP and experience it, and to give this statement yourselves to the people sitting on those tables. But yeah, huge whakataitele lava. I'm looking forward to after this call, and yeah, whakataitele lava, everyone.
Thank you so much. And like I've said, this event and now this statement has been a labor of love for Save the Children. I was lucky enough to go to COP last year, and as much as it was a piece of pride to represent our country, it was damning and terrifying to know how far we have to come. And the fact that there was really only 6 of us representing young people from New Zealand was also equally terrifying. So I love that we are now on this journey where not only have we had this event and we have this statement, that we can keep pushing and campaigning to make sure that we are on the ground, to make sure our voices are heard at the highest level as hard as we can. And my hope is that all of us here, that now that we're kind of sitting on the exact same frequency with those goals in mind, that we can work to make those goals a reality and really make that vision tangible for each and every one of us. So that way we can turn that fear, that terror into triumph for us all. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone on the call. Our MPs, we know the schedules must be packed, especially this time of year, but we appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us, to receive this statement, to receive these words from our young people. I know it's going to definitely be a memorable experience. For our young people on the call, you guys kill it every single time. Once again, it's always a pleasure to be the platform for you guys to stand on so that way you can absolutely scream your lungs out, because every word you have to say, every single letter is a gem. And we are so grateful that Save the Children can hold it briefly for this moment as you continue in this journey. Fayasia, thank you so much, holding it down for the Youth Climate Collective and the Pacific Climate Warriors. Also shouting out to our really strong partners with EPIT and UNICEF who supported us pulling this event together. And now that we're kind of sitting on this other side and working towards this vision. I'm really glad that we all got the opportunity together. And thank you to everyone who got to watch on, on the call. Thank you so much for joining us on this very gloomy night, at least in Wellington. We really appreciate you all taking the time to really hear what these young people have to say, what we're able to produce, and hear about our hopes and visions for the future. Now that we've got all that out of the way, I will close us off with karakia and then fare us all away. Feel free to join if you know it. If not, feel free to just listen. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapunui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua i te ara tangata. Hoia rā i rongo, whakaaeria ake ki runga, kia tina, tina. Homie huie, tai kie. All right, goodbye everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.